Hello and welcome to another video. Today I will be bringing you another author review video. Today we will be looking at Stacy Willingham. If you're interested, I done a Samantha Downing author review video. I will leave that linked somewhere in case you're interested. But today we're going to be talking about Stacy Willingham. If you don't know, Stacy Willingham has three books out. She has Flicker in the Dark, Ooh, All the Dangerous Things, and in February she has Only If You're Lucky coming out. And I was lucky because I received an ARC of this one. So I'm going to talk about all three of these and tell you my thoughts. Spoiler free, of course, unless stated otherwise, but I try to keep these spoiler free. So let's start with the first book that I read, Stacy Willingham's debut novel, A Flicker in the Dark. I really enjoyed this. I gave this a 4.5. Would I lower it to a 4 upon reread? Potentially, but I had a really good time reading this when I read it. In this, we follow Chloe Davis, and she is, living her best life. She's a psychologist. She is getting engaged. She has a lovely fiance, a nice house. Like, she's moving on with her life because when she was a teenager, six teenage girls went missing, and her father went to prison for their murders as a serial killer. So she has a lot of trauma in her past and also in her present because that's not something like you get over, like it's not something that you can just brush under the carpet and call a day. It is very much gonna stay with you. And I really enjoyed in this book, it was fast, it was entertaining, it was a little bit predictable. Like, it wasn't, surprise after twist after surprise. It was kind of predictable in some of the plot points that was in this book, but it was one of those that just kind of felt like it immersed you really quickly in the story. The writing was really well done. I really enjoyed the writing, and I think all three of these books have that in common. I think Stacey Willingham, has that talent, that knack, for writing a compelling kind of narrative, even if you're not a fan of the book, which we will get into later. So, spoilers for upcoming vibes in this video. I should probably get my notes out because I did take notes. So, she has a knack for writing, and like it's quite compelling writing. Even when you're not a huge fan of the story, I feel like her writing really compels you to keep reading. So in this, the characters were interesting to say the least. You have Chloe, who's a psychologist and is dealing with a lot of, you know, childhood trauma surrounding the fact that her father was a serial killer. And then you have her fiance, who kind of like their dynamic is very interesting. It's very well written because you are very well aware that you know, she could be targeted because of who she is. Like there is people out there that, want to be and like inject themselves into investigations or into people's lives that have suffered, and you kind of go through this book questioning every interaction she has. Are they who they say they are? Are their intentions good? You never quite know. So like the dynamic between her and her fiance is really well done because you never quite know if you trust him or not. And then you have like her brother who also experienced what she experienced, and he handles it a total different way than her. Even though this book was predictable, it was entertaining, and that is what I really enjoyed about this. It kind of felt like you were in a movie. Like, do you know, like, not to downgrade this book because I do believe this was a really good read. I gave it a 4.5 star, and I do think I do recommend this. But do you know those like Hallmark thrillers that are a little bit cheesy, a little bit like suspend your disbelief? Picture that mixed with a Gillian Flynn film. When I was reading this, I kind of got, oh, forgotten what it's called now. It's the oh Sharp Objects. No, no, that's not the right one. That's the TV show. So there's Sharp Objects, Gone Girl, Dark Places. So Dark Places. If you haven't watched this, this is a film that stars Charlie Theron. Who knows? I probably said that wrong. But this follows, a woman who, like, her family were killed in a mass murder, and her brother went to prison for it, and there's this team of people that want to, like, are convinced he's innocent. So imagine that with a little bit of the cheesy, Hallmark thrillers you get. That's what I felt this book was. It was that line between serious and edgy, and also, cheesy and predictable. So it kind of just was a perfect match of both, and I really enjoyed this. Also, if you've read this and enjoy this, I highly recommend Dark Places, the book and the film. They're both really well done, because they have, for me, they have like that kind of woman at the center, serial killer or mass murder situation going on, and the unraveling of everything that happened. So yeah, I really enjoyed this and highly recommend this one. I'm gonna leave you with a quote for A Flicker in the Dark, in case I haven't sold you on it already. There are so many subtle ways we women subconsciously protect ourselves throughout the day. Protect ourselves from shadows, from unseen predators, from cautionary tales and urban legends. So subtle, in fact, that we hardly even realize we're doing them. I mean, I really enjoy the way Stacy Willingham writes women, so I love this quote because it's true. The next book is All the Dangerous Things. And I give this a 4. I didn't like it as much as Flicker in the Dark, but I did still enjoy it nonetheless. So in this, we follow Isabel Drake, and she has not been able to sleep or function since her toddler Mason was taken from his crib in the room next door to her and her sleeping husband. Now, when I say she hasn't been able to rest, I mean she barely sleeps unless she blacks out or it's a cat nap. So in this whole story, you're following an unreliable narrator as she is just so desperate to find her son. She truly believes he's out there somewhere, and you just feel for this character. This character is one that you have simultaneous sympathy and pity for, because there's characters around her that have moved on. Her husband, their marriage broke down, he's moved on. Even like the police, say it's a cold case, she is literally the only one that is fighting and believes that her son is out there somewhere. And so in this is very, it's hard to read, because obviously when you're speaking about a woman, a person missing their child, it is literally like something you will never experience, never know what it's like to experience unless you experience it, and you hopefully never will experience it. So like, Stacey Willingham done a really good job at putting us in the driver's seat in Isabel's perspective, and really making you question what you would feel like if you were in her position. And I really enjoyed that, because I am not a parent myself, but I couldn't imagine the absolute rawness and the pain that would come from a situation like this. And I believe that Stacey Willingham done a good job at putting me in those shoes, even though I'm not in those shoes. This was fast, it was entertaining. The reason that I didn't like this so much was because I felt like it could have had a darker ending. And I don't know if this is because I've been exploring the darker side of fiction recently, so I think that everything should be, darker, but it just wrapped up too nicely. Like, it just finished on a very, like, don't get me wrong, it would be nice to think the events of this book would happen. It would be very nice to think that. But the chances of the events of this book happening are so low that it doesn't feel like the ending that I thought would happen, and I kind of wish it went darker, which is why I rated it down, because it just wrapped up too nicely for my liking. I did enjoy, though, you know, the very shaky narrative of Isabel. Like, she wasn't getting sleep, she was blacking out. She is literally the epitome of an unreliable narrator, because she is not in her right mind 90% of the time. And then add in the fact that, she's missing her child is like, it's a break in your mind that's bound to happen. So I did really enjoy being in that point of view. I just didn't feel like it went far enough, in my opinion. But again, I do think that Stacey Willingham has that knack for writing, that even though this plot didn't go where I wanted it to go, it still kept me reading. The writing style still kept me there and in place. And I will leave you with this quote. I learned fairly quickly that when people asked how I was doing, how I was holding up, they didn't actually want an answer. Not a real one anyway. So I simply ignored that little needle prick that stuck in my jaw, the threat of impending tears, and plastered a smile on my face, giving them the answer I knew they expected, that everything was good, everything was fine. In fact, no, everything was perfect. This is essentially like, this is why, like, those two quotes, this is why I think Stacy Willingham just has that little knack for writing female protagonists, because you like them, like, even though, like, so you feel like sympathy and pity for Isabel, and you feel kind of like, I would say, more pity for Chloe, but they're both going through like really, really hard things in their life. And she does such a good job at portraying how that would feel, even if you don't know the circumstances. Like having a serial killer as a dad, you know, losing your toddler. Like, these are situations I hope no one can ever pull from. But I think she done a really good job at putting us in the driver's seat of these two female protagonists and making us feel how they felt. So, moving on to the bulk of this video, because I just finished this. So, I read A Flicker in the Dark and All the Dangerous Things as they came out, so 2022, 2023, and now I was lucky enough to see an arc of Only If You're Lucky, which comes out in February. I can't remember the exact date, I will leave that on screen so you know. And unfortunately, I have come here to tell you that I have found a flop for Stacy Willingham. So, 4.5 stars. I have vibed with this author. I know she can do right by me, but this book just didn't. And I'm swithering. I haven't fully decided if this is going to be a 2.5 or a 3 star. So let's talk it through, and I will hopefully decide as I explain to you how I felt about this book, what star rating to give it. So in this book, we follow Margot, and let me tell you, when I say I hate the name Margot, simply because it's spelled Margot, and my brain just doesn't like the T being in there, because it kind of, like, even though I know it's Margot and the T's silent, like the T kind of makes me stutter on the page sometimes, when I'm not focusing enough, probably. So we follow Margot, and Margot is going to make a new life for herself. She is moving to Rutledge College. She's starting her first year as a freshman, and she is excited to get away from her past, because in her hometown, she and her best friend Eliza were thick as thieves, and they done everything together until they fell out, and Eliza ended up dead. And in this story, you're not quite sure what happened to Eliza, and you're not quite sure, like, what's going on. Like, you're never quite 100% aware of what's going on in this story. Like, you follow Margot to Rutledge, and she is then befriended by a girl called Lucy. Now, Lucy has a friend group, so there's Lucy, Nicole, and Sloane, and they are always together. And Lucy decides one day that she wants Margot to be part of this. And Margot thinks that she sees Eliza, she sees her best friend in Lucy, and that is probably what caused the initial attraction to this person for her. And she is approached by Lucy. Lucy asks if she wants to stay with them in like an off campus house. But this house is run by the Kappa News, which is a fraternity. There's like a weird gate that combines these properties. They get really cheap rent, which is why they all move in. So you follow Margot as she becomes friends with these three girls, and things start getting a little strange, because there is this boy called Levi who is from her hometown. He shows up, and you're not sure like what him and Margot's relationship is. But it is made very clear in the synopsis and in the first chapter that he ends up dead. So you're not sure what the hell is going on. You follow Margot as she tries to, like, so there's a couple of different timelines in this story. You have the present timeline where Margot's in Rutledge, and then you have the after timeline where the police detective is looking into the death of Levi. And then you also have like flashbacks to Eliza and Margot as friends. So there's a couple of different things going on here, and there is a lot in this book. I think this book could have done with a good edit, because there was probably, like, I would say about 60 pages of this book that I did not need. There's like a Thanksgiving dinner, there is, a party that didn't add anything, a Christmas break that didn't need to be in there. It felt like it was just trying to drag itself out. And I honestly believe if this book was like 300 pages or just over, this could have been a hit for me, but it just took too long to get anywhere. We were like in this narrative in Margot's head, and Margot wasn't the most likable character. Like, she's kind of judgy in a way that it's just annoying. Like, for example, she gets her rent and her food and everything paid for by her mom and dad because she is well off, whereas Lucy has to like go work and like substitute her earnings to feed herself and pay rent. And like, Margot makes this weird comment of like, oh, it's weird to see her work, like the rest of us. And I'm like, you don't work, you have a very privileged life. And it was kind of like, check your privilege, girl. Like, she kind of like, it was kind of like a judgment on Lucy, and it was kind of annoying. So like, Margot was quite a judgmental character, and you seen that straight off the bat. Even when she was wrong, she dug her heels in, and you kind of just, being in her narrative, even though she was an unlikable character, was fine until she started making these judgments, and then the narrative kept droning on and on and on. And there was a lot of things that I think could have been taken out of this book to make it snappier. If this book was snappier, it would have been well done. The reason I'm not like sure about my rating is because I still like the writing. I still like the way that Stacy Willingham writes her female characters, friendships, the way she looks, like the way she makes you look through the lens of someone. And I really enjoyed that. So like, the writing was still there. I just wish it was edited down more, because it just felt like we got a lot of nonsense we didn't need, and it made the narrative drag. It made the plot drag, it made the story drag, and it was just so unfortunate because the characters were well written, the writing was good. I just think it was too long. It was too long. There was a lot of inane babble we didn't need. And I know that, Stacey Willingham can write a snappy book, because both of our previous books have been snappy. I don't actually know how long these books are. So we have All the Dangerous Things. Yeah, so All the Dangerous Things is like 320. And then A Flicker in the Dark. Flicker in the Dark is, yeah, 350. So 320, 350. The new book is 384. So I honestly believe if she took it down to 350 or 320, this book would have hit a lot better for me. But I was dragging my feet. I enjoyed, I would say, the first 40% was a hit. I was interested, I was intrigued in the story, the plot was moving along, characters were introduced, we were on forward momentum, and it felt good, it was nice. And then I would say from the 40 to the 75% region, it just started dragging. Like, we had things repeated that we had already known, and we were getting little slow reveals that was like, just get to the point already. And I just think that there could have been, edits to down this book and make it snappier like her other work. And I feel really bad saying this because I have enjoyed her other two previous books, and this one just didn't work for me, and I'm so sad about it. I would have loved, this was a story essentially on friendship, and I would have loved it to be, you know, like, it was a good start. This is why I'm like a little bit hesitant to rate it lower, because it was a good start. I was invested in the friendships, in the growth of these girls, seeing them all come together, and in the way they interact. It was very interesting. But once you get to the halfway mark and you still don't know what happened to Eliza, you still don't know what happened to Levi, there's no like breadcrumbs that you followed to the point where you're like, this is where the story's going. And even then, when you do get to the third act, the twists and turns and everything are just like, eh. Like, I wouldn't say they were predictable. I would say one thing's predictable. Um, And I would say one thing was like a twist, a surprise. But even the twist surprise was just like you felt bad more than anything else. Like I didn't feel good about the twist or the end of this book. You just felt bad because like I don't know. It was just one of those that just didn't really work in the sense of it was too long. It didn't really hit the way that it was meant to hit. It wasn't predictable, but it wasn't surprising or thrilling in any means. And I would say this is more mystery than thriller in my opinion. And I just didn't vibe with it that well. I will say if you did like if you've read this or plan to read this, I think a good comp title for it is somewhere on my shelves. Ooh, where is it? Where is it? Oh. Ah, there we go. So, mm, so if you're interested in reading, um, only if you're lucky, I would suggest reading it if you want to. I don't recommend it because I didn't have a good time with it, but it gave me similar vibes to She and I by Hannah King, and I think that if you read this and aren't a big fan of it, you will be a fan of this. And it follows that kind of intense friendship, mystery surrounding a death of a boyfriend or a man in their life and the subsequent investigation. So I think this is a great comp title for it, and I think this book done what only if you're lucky was meant to do, unfortunately. So I do recommend this as a comp title. I think I've settled on a 2.75 rating. Now, in the past, I've never used quarter ratings because I've always been a star or half a star. But this year, I've decided to adopt the quarter star rating because, for example, in a situation like this, I didn't want to give it a 2.5 because it felt too low, but also a 3 just didn't feel right because it wasn't quite average for me. So it is best to just settle directly in the middle. And that is why I'm starting to use quarter stars now because it gives me more of a place to put my feelings. So to summarize this video, I would recommend A Flicker in the Dark first. This is the first book I would recommend from this author, and I do think that you should pick this up. If you like this and want to continue, I do recommend All the Dangerous Things. It's not as good, but it's still, a recommendation for me. But I would not recommend Only If You're Lucky because I did not enjoy it, and I don't think it goes in line with how I felt about these two books. I think that if you pick it up and read it, I would be interested in your thoughts. Let me know in the comments. Spoiler free, and if it's not spoiler free, please like specifically mark that you're gonna say spoilers so no one reads it and gets spoiled. So yeah, I would not recommend Only If You're Lucky, but I would recommend these two. And I'm still going to continue with this author because out of the 3 books that she has taken out, I have enjoyed 2 and gave 2 more than a 4 star. So this book didn't work for me, but I have hopes her next one will. Not every single book from an author is going to hit, and I just need to keep remembering that. I'm having this thing, where like if I have 2 good and 2 bad from an author, the 5th one will then determine how I feel and if I continue picking up their books. Whereas I'm not at that point yet with this author. This author is still very much 2 for 1. So her next one will be, if her next one's bad, then her 5th one will be the deciding factor if I continue her work. But if the next one's good, then I will just continue and pick up her work. So yeah, that is all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please let me know down in the comments if you've read any of these books, if you have any thriller recommendations, any authors that you would like me to try. I would love to hear. I hope you have a great day, a great week, whenever the hell you're watching this. Remember to stay safe, happy, and healthy, and I will see you next time. Bye.
Pick it up from the top, hit restart. So far it's been